What's going on, guys? It's Ty the TV Guy back with another video today, and after the release of the recent film Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I wanted to go through and rank the 4 most recent Planet of the Apes movies. The Planet of the Apes franchise is one that I've loved for a while now, but I kind of forgot about the movies, being that I hadn't really watched them since the last one released in 2017, which at this point is 7 years ago. So I did go back and watch the recent trilogy from the 2010s, and then I watched the most recent movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, of course. Before I get into it, I make a lot of content on movies and TV shows, and if you think you'd be interested, subscribe to my channel, leave a like on this video, it helps out more than you know. So at number 4, I do actually have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the movie that just released this year in 2024. The new main character that we follow after the era of Caesar is Noah in this film, and quite frankly, I don't find him to be all that interesting. In the 2-hour and 30-minute runtime that this movie has, which flat out was just too much, I really don't feel that Noah has like a character-defining moment and one that makes him stick out from any of the other apes. Now, I did find a couple characters interesting. Rocca, somebody he finds along the way who really is devoted to Caesar as kind of like the god of the apes. It was an interesting way that they honored Caesar in this new movie outside of the prior trilogy, which is that, now Caesar is this ape legend, and some of the apes, such as Rocca, believe in him just as a human would believe in a religious figure. So that was quite cool to see. But to me, in the same way that was interesting, it was also the problem because I found them talking about Caesar's legacy and referencing him to be one of the most interesting parts of the story to me. And of course, that's no good. I mean, we're out of that trilogy now. We want to move forward and be interested in what these characters are up to and how they're living in this day and age, which I believe is set 300 years after the events of the prior trilogy. And unfortunately, especially throughout the first half of the movie, I just didn't find much to be interesting. There just wasn't much to the storyline, in my opinion. Now, later on, we do meet Proximus Caesar, who has a lot of charisma, who really jumps off the screen at you and seems to be in control of the apes at this site that he's running. And it definitely seems like he could be up to some shady things and could be an amazing antagonist in future films in this franchise, but we really just didn't get enough screen time with him in this movie. And the one main human character we did have, I didn't feel much of a connection to either. She is very skeptical of the apes the whole time once they get to the site that Proximus Caesar is in charge of, and she pulls off this elaborate plan at the end, to kind of ruin their base and ruin the old equipment that a human military had left behind, because she thought if the apes got access to that, then there was no chance for the humans to ever recover and become, I guess, the master species, I guess. The main highlight of this film that many people are talking about is the breathtaking motion capture and graphics and scenery all over this movie. That truly is amazing, but, just strictly speaking about the characters and the storyline and the plot, I didn't feel like there was much meat on the bone with this one, unfortunately. So I have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes at number 4. Alright, so with this trilogy from the 2010s, it was honestly really hard to rank these for me, but at number 3, I do have War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, this movie is spectacular. I think it closes out Caesar's character in a grand and amazing way. I really enjoy it, start to finish, but I guess there's just a couple aspects of the movie that I didn't like quite as much as the other ones. Once again, I still love this movie, but I just prefer things about the other ones. First off, we get Caesar breaking off from the majority of the group in this movie, and his son and wife die very early on in this one. So we don't get his interactions with a lot of those characters and with his family throughout this movie. And I always found in the prior 2 movies, his interactions in those ways, kind of showing him leading the entire group, or in Dawn, for example, him leading his family and, being so loving toward his family. I thought that really showed Caesar's character in the best light. And in this movie, he definitely has some internal struggles, and I realize that, and that's very interesting to explore. Maurice kind of points out that at a point he's being so vengeful that he's acting like Koba used to. And although that hurts Caesar at first, he acknowledges later in the movie that Maurice was right. He can't let go of what this human did to him. And even though he recognizes it, he still continues his pursuit to kill, the leader of this army battalion or whatever, to kill him because of how gruesomely he killed his wife and his son. And I like that it points out that, revenge is a tricky thing, and it can affect anyone, even when you think someone is, a noble, respected, kind, loving leader like Caesar. Everybody has their breaking point, and he gets to a point where there's no turning back. He really wants this general dead, and that continued pursuit of the general in this movie is one of the main storylines and something that's really interesting on a deep character level for me. And although I didn't get to see Caesar at his best morally necessarily, we did get to see him ride with his main crew of Maurice, Luca, Rocket, and eventually Bad Ape, as well as the little girl, Nova, I believe Maurice names her, that they pick up along the way. I did enjoy the character dynamics between these several characters while they were together. Unfortunately, Luca dies, saving Caesar from an attack made by humans about halfway through the movie. And soon after, that's when things start spiraling downward, and Caesar gets captured as well and taken into the camp with the rest of the apes. This movie certainly had a lot of moving parts, because not only was there the military that was scared of the apes and captured them so that they could no longer be a threat, but now there's an opposing military that is coming to attack this military because of differing beliefs in how they're treating the virus and a new mutation of it, which the general that killed Caesar's family has explained, he doesn't want anyone that has come in contact with this to continue living, because he believes it will spread and end the human race once and for all, whereas this other army feels like he's treating the whole situation unfairly. And, this slight difference in views, I guess it's a major difference, but, you'd think they could work it out other than just killing each other, being that there's only so many humans left already. But no, they go to war, hence the name War for the Planet of the Apes. And obviously the apes, they're mischievous characters in this, and they get involved as well. They hatch an escape plan led by Maurice and Rocket, and it's a brilliant one at that. They end up getting out of their prison cells at this military camp just before the attack happens, and unfortunately a lot of them still get caught in the crossfire. It's a really intense war scene, between the apes in both militaries, the one invading, the one trying to hold down the fort. And, there's so many good moments within the build-up to this and the actual scenes of the war. But there's none better than the climax of this movie, where Donkey, a gorilla that for the longest time has betrayed the apes and, gone to work for the military and imprisoned a lot of his former ape friends, he ultimately ends up sacrificing his life to save Caesar, shooting a rocket launcher at a military member that was chasing him down and about to shoot Caesar dead. This was an emotional scene in the movie because for the longest time, Caesar tried to convince Donkey that him helping the humans won't get him any special treatment after this is all over. They're going to kill him just the same as they killed all the rest of them. And Donkey didn't seem to wrap his head around that for the longest time. He was, scared, and the military used fear tactics against him to keep him working for them. But eventually he realized that he needed to help his kind, that he was not living a life true to himself, and he made a very unselfish decision in saving Caesar in that moment, who was already wounded. And, without Donkey's efforts here, Caesar wouldn't have been able to blow up the camp and let so many apes escape. So even though Donkey wasn't good to them for most of this movie, he did have a crucial turning point as a character, and I can appreciate him for that. And really, I think the closing 30 minutes of this movie, how heroic he is, how much he steps up to the plate once again as not only the leader spiritually for the apes, but the physical leader too. He's out on the front lines doing all the dirty work as well, Caesar that is, and it leads into his spoiler alert, I've already given a lot here, but spoiler alert to his death scene at the end. Of course, this is the last movie of the trilogy, so they end out his character with him dying from a battle wound. But it's once he returns the apes to safety and to happiness, and I thought that was a really good choice. They didn't have him die in the battle and then, let the apes try to escape that situation without their leader. he stayed along their side the whole trek, away from the military camp. And once they got to a peaceful place, a safe place, Caesar was satisfied and he could pass away lying on that rock next to his buddy Maurice the way he deserved to. So I thought it was a beautiful ending for Caesar's character, a really great and climactic movie overall. Just so much happened in this movie, some that I didn't really get to explore here, but I don't want to, have this be a 40-minute video. At number 2, I have Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and this is starring James Franco as the main human and as Caesar's dad in this storyline. Here we get the origin story of Caesar, where he came from, how he was born, why he was born as intelligent as he was. Of course, it was due to the Alzheimer experiments that James Franco's character was performing to try to correct his dad's disease. This, of course, had a world-changing fallout, leading to the death and destruction of like 99% of Earth's humans, and, the rise in intelligence and in population of the apes, and kind of led to their takeover, of course. But in this movie, we don't know that's going to happen. We see Caesar grow from a sheltered ape taken care of by a human to, one that finally enters his natural habitat by the end of the movie, finally finds his own kind. And even though he appreciates what James Franco's character did for him in this movie, and he appreciates the contributions of humans in his life, and that continues to be pivotal in future movies, because Caesar is the main ape that sees the good in humans. He is one of the few apes out of all that are in this group that has had positive experiences growing up with humans, and just with humans in general in the past. The rest of them kind of seek the death and extermination of humans, whereas Caesar, if at all possible, would like to let them live alongside the apes. And this is why I have this movie ahead of War, because I think it's so crucial in shaping Caesar's character and, all of his character traits as well. And it just shows why he shows so much mercy to humans compared to the other apes. And of course, there's a vast juxtaposition made between him and Koba in the second movie, but we'll get to that obviously at number 1. But yeah, I love this movie, and I think all of the lessons it teaches us, one of them being that, some things aren't meant to be tamed and chained forever. And apes certainly fall into that category. Even Caesar, who got along well with humans and, loved them to a large extent, he, by the end of the movie, realized that his home wasn't with the humans. It was out in the wild, in that forest, in the trees, with his own kind, with the other apes, exploring and living like an ape should. I thought it was a beautiful message, a wonderful build-up of Caesar's character, once again, to give us that moral base for his character that really shaped the next 2 movies and their storylines as well, I think. Not to mention, I think the battle scene on the Golden Gate Bridge is a super underrated battle throughout these 3 movies. I think the first movie is kind of thought of as the one that has like no action, but I thought that this one is arguably, the best fight between humans and apes. I loved it on the Golden Gate Bridge in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So yeah, great movie, great world building, great character development, and I love what it led to in the second movie, because Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which released in 2014, is my favorite Planet of the Apes movie, at least of these 4, but probably overall, even including the past movies as well. So this makes my number 1 spot pretty easily. I think what I had at 2 and 3, Rise and War, were closer than this one. This was my definite number 1 after coming out of watching all 4 of these movies. And for me, the reason is because it combined all of the elements that I love about this movie franchise all into one. To me, I think Caesar is at his best, and we also get the best villain in Koba. Koba and Caesar are basically polar opposites, not only in their actions, but in their experiences. Though Koba is a really annoying villain because he literally destroys everything Caesar worked so hard to maintain, the peace, the agreements that they were able to make with the humans. Koba destroys it all by seeking revenge and, just flat out going to kill them. Like I was saying, though it sucks that he does that to the apes, If anyone has a reason to be that vengeful, Koba does, because he was kept in captivity basically as a lab rat, or a lab ape, I guess, with them doing these experiments on him, not treating him very well for about 10 years, I believe it was. So by the end of that, Koba had no respect for humans, whereas Caesar had seen the good side in them and understood that, humans and apes are more similar than both sides think. Both fear the other, both hate the other, and don't like the idea of the other taking over the world. But Caesar knows that it doesn't have to be that way. They can coexist. But unfortunately, since the vast majority on each side don't think that, it just doesn't become a reality. And I love once it's thought that Caesar's dead, but he's really alive, and then the humans save him and bring him back to his old house. When his son, Blue Eyes, returns, I love when Caesar says, and this isn't a direct quote, it's a paraphrase, but, humans didn't do this. Apes did it. We're more like the humans than we think. And what he means by that is there's good humans, there's bad humans, there's good apes, there's bad apes. Just because something bad happens, it can't be blamed on a human. Just because something good happens doesn't mean it came from an ape. There's humans and apes of varying morality, and I think that's a great lesson for the real world as well, where people want to stereotype so much. Obviously, I'm talking more just, with different demographics of humans rather than with humans and apes, but it's still kind of the same thing. People want to say that because a person looks this way, they're going to be more likely to commit a crime, say, or they're going to be more likely to be rich, or they're going to be more likely to do anything of any sort. And it's simply just not a fair way to assess people. You should assess them by the character and, by the content of their heart, not by the color of their skin, not by their height, not by their weight, not by where they're from, nothing like that. And though Caesar says it in much simpler terms, I think what he said means everything that I just explained. Obviously, the apes weren't the most advanced at speaking. These are like the first apes to ever speak. So Caesar, though he could speak, and it's amazing that he could speak in its own right, he was an ape of few words. He's not dropping these, song lyrics or something, but, he could say so much with so few words and be so captivating with those words. And I think that's why the pack, really chose to follow him throughout the entirety of this trilogy. He just had, that captivating voice, and the one that you knew you could trust and follow in tough times. But yeah, Koba just does so many conniving things, attempts to and seemingly murders Caesar at the ape's home and blames it on the humans just so he could incite a war on the humans in San Francisco, which was just an evil thing to do. I mean, Koba wanted to take out the leader that he acted like he respected just so he could, be the new evil leader of the group, to go try to take everything away from the humans, to exterminate the humans from existence, when Caesar had a great agreement in place for them to coexist, for them to live peacefully side by side. Now, would that have lasted? We don't know, but I certainly think they would have lost a lot less apes, like Caesar said, and there would have just been a lot less death and destruction and turmoil overall, and things could have calmed down for a long time. These battle scenes were truly epic, and, seeing how Koba took over and manipulated so many of the apes and forced them to follow his ways of, just brutal murder for no reason, was hard to watch. But luckily, Caesar returns near the end of this movie and takes on Koba in a 1v1 fight in which he drops a lot more quotables. Ultimately, he defeats Koba and Koba reaches his demise, but not before he begs for Caesar's forgiveness and asks him to pull him up off the platform that he's barely hanging on to, and says, apes don't kill apes, because that's what Caesar once said, even though Koba had, just thrown his brothers in the way of bullets many times throughout the battle to save himself. But Caesar has a legendary response and says, "You are not ape."
You are not ape.
And And this is just why I love Caesar. He is just spot on with his assessments of every situation pretty much, and he just tells it how it is. So that is my ranking. Once again, at 4, I have Kingdom. At 3, I have War. At 2, I have Rise. And at 1, I have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Let me know what you think of this ranking. Let me know how you would rank these movies in the comments. I'm really interested to see. I think a lot of people have Dawn as their favorite, but I'm not really sure. For me, the world building and character dynamics that we get in Rise and the epicness of battle and, the struggles that we get on, deep personal levels in War, all of that kind of combines into its best version in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is what makes it my favorite movie of the 3 and, of the trilogy and of these 4 newer movies as a whole. Once again, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. And until next time, I'll see you later.